So the title is Carried on Spirit Wings.
So we're here in Playonda in Lanzarote with Maria Dunne. This interview is being conducted under all of the guidelines for COVID. So we're socially distanced, and myself and Charlie, the cameraman, have our masks, and we are fully sanitised as well. So I'm going to begin the interview. First of all, thank you, Anne-Marie, for sitting with me today. Thank you so much. Of course, the first question that we're going to ask is, what's the inspiration and the idea behind your book?
Well, I think the inspiration goes back many years. Over the years, people had said to me, it would be a good idea to write a book. And I always thought, well, yeah, someday. But over the years, I would have kept journals. There were never any sort of sporadic continuity in the journals, but when I went travelling, I'd always write something about my travels. And then a number of years later, my friend Greg, a mutual friend of ours, had said at her funeral, she had said to him years beforehand, if anything ever happens to me, shred those journals. So I thought, all right. So then I said, well, if anything ever happens to me, shred my journals. They were in a suitcase under the bed. So it was always kind of little inklings that I would write a book, but I never really felt strong enough, I suppose, to set aside the time. And life was very busy.
Yes.
And then last January I was quite ill. I was in hospital for over a month. And my friend Harriet had met a writer. This is going to be a bit convoluted, but anyway, she had met a writer in America who wanted to come to Ireland to write. And she had asked Harriet, was there anybody that she could link in with to maybe help them write a memoir? So she came to visit me in the nursing home. And we spent about 2 hours together, chatting, getting to know each other. And after the 2 hours, I just my gut sense was, no, she's not the right one for me. So I remember that evening going into a little chapel in the nursing home. And I just put it up to Spirit. I said, if you want me to write a book, I need to have a message that's clear and on the table. I'm not waiting. So that evening, a friend visited. The food was dreadful in the nursing home, so we were eating hummus and crackers. And she said to me, Anne-Marie, I'm thinking it's time for you to write a book. That very evening. So I thought, I was a bit overwhelmed. I thought, God, that's a quick answer to prayer. So yeah, that's when it's happened, when I was in the nursing home. And then we started to make inquiries, and I got to talk to a lady in South Africa who was Irish, coming back to live in Ireland. And we met one Saturday down in Wicklow, where I live. And we had a very pleasant exchange. And I thought, this is the one. So she was going to help me, assist me, to accompany me through my journals, through my ramblings, through through all of that, all the things that were stuffed in that suitcase. So we started just as COVID began. We had one session together, face to face. And then after that, what happened was COVID locked in. So we did sessions by Zoom. And I would talk to her about a part of my life. and she would write it up, and I would get the version, and I would edit it, send it back to her, and then re-edit it. So it was kind of done in bits. And it was really through Harriet and Lucille that they were the promptings to do the book. They were the promptings.
So the book covers your whole story?
Right from the beginning, right from birth.
Okay.
Yeah, right from birth, right to the end.
All the highlights?
The highlights and the lowlights and the difficulties.
Of course.
And the challenges of life as it happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's quite a comprehensive book. I'm not sure how many pages are in it, but I think there's over 280 in it. It's a good thick book.
Yeah, good.
And there are photographs of me as a child and of childhood and memories of childhood and things that happened and difficult things that happened.
And how did you find the experience?
It was quite difficult, actually. As I wrote, different things were coming up for me. Like, I thought all my grief issues were finalized and all my issues in life were all tucked away finally. But no, it actually resurrected a lot for me. So that was a surprise.
Okay.
Because grief came with the book. It was like going through another form of grief by revisiting the
Almost
people
reliving
and revisiting the pain of the past, also the joys, the heartbreaks,
yes,
everything that comes in one lifetime.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that kind of hit me by surprise. That hit me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that.
Overall, have you found it therapeutic to do?
Well, I'll tell you now, the word therapeutic, there's so many different meanings to the word. We all have a story.
Of course.
And we all have a story to tell. For me, the therapeutic piece was, I suppose, revisiting painful parts that I thought were well and truly healed. So that was the surprise for me, that there was still unresolved issues in my life.
Okay.
And at that time then, because we were in COVID, unfortunately, I couldn't just ring up my therapist or, because therapists weren't working. So I kind of braved it out for a while and did my best to carry it. But I do remember at one stage saying, I'm not sure if I can go on with this. It was kind of too heart-wrenching.
Really?
Yeah, it was too heart-wrenching. Yeah, but I did. And then what happened then, I suppose there was a natural break because I ended up in hospital. And I had 10 radiotherapy sessions. And then I was told, you're going to be flat out for 2 months. So that gave me a 2-month reprieve, whereas I didn't even want to look at the book. I thought, can't go near it. And then that brought me to October. And then that's when I came here with the manuscript under my arm, saying, I'm not going anywhere until I finish this book. So that's been my task since I came here, was to finish the book.
So Lanzarote gives you the clarity, the peace of mind to be able to revisit some of that was so difficult again?
Well, I think Lanzarote, I've been onto the island many times, for many years. And I love Playa Honda. It's quiet. It just suits my temperament. And of course, in the past, I was walking down the prom up and down, and now I'm more limited. I'm not able to do that. But really, I just liked the energy here.
Yes.
The energy here was conducive to some sort of healing. And it was also a way to just come away from things at home. I mean, I'm retired now, I don't have a busy life, but there's always something to do.
Of course.
There's always something to do.
Of course.
And my main focus anyway was getting this book completed.
So the energy that you feel here in Lanzarote, where does that come from for you?
Well, I love nature, you know, and walking on that prom in the morning, which I used to do every day, it just kind of enlivens my spirit. Some people love to go up a mountain. I just love to be by the ocean. I love to be by the sea. And there's something in the waves, in the environment. If I drop into it, you know, my head is often busy with things that are going on. But if I really drop into the silence and the sounds around me with nature, that's when I think I have some sort of connection.
Okay. We all struggle with switching off our heads. So for you, changing location helps you do that and being by the ocean. But if that's something that you can't do, are there other ways that you can get that clarity?
Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly. I mean, I think coming to Lanzarote has been a real privilege for me to hop on a plane and take this time out. But I think when we come to that inner stillness, that inner knowing, that inner listening to that inner voice, whatever we call it, that you know, something deeper can happen. It doesn't happen overnight. I think it takes years of practice. And even if we just get a glimpse of those moments of silence. But we live all the time with this monkey mind, as it's called. You know, the mind jumping from branch to branch and distractions, because we're all distracted. The natural phenomena of the mind is to think and to plan and to make schemes and to all of that. But I think there is, underneath that, there is a deeper connection we can make. Certainly, most certainly. So whether you're sitting on a mountaintop or sitting in a field in Ireland or sitting by the sea, but I do think nature sustains us. Nature sustains us, certainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And being open to just the stillness. Because usually when we sit to meditate, our mind is full of clatter and busyness. So it takes a while to kind of calm all that down and to just calm down, I suppose, calm the mind. Yeah.
So for the people who managed to get hold of your book and get a copy of your book, obviously it's a journey of your life, but I imagine just talking to you now that there's a lot of learning that people can take from the book. Do you talk about this in the book, how people can...
Well, you see, it's very interesting. I questioned the whole thing of doing the book. I said, okay, I have a story, but like, who's going to be interested in my story? And I was questioning, you know, and I often think of a book as a book with a message.
Yes.
Or 10 ways to find a boyfriend or something, you know, this kind of thing. You know, a lot of the new age books have focus like that. You know, I'm being a bit facetious here, but yeah, no, I think for me, that was one of my struggles at the beginning. What is my message? What am I writing about? I'm starting with my childhood. I'm going on to my teenage years. I'm going on to this, and this. But like, what's that all really going to end up as?
Mm-hmm.
But the book did take off. I mean, it did, certainly. There was a trajectory.
Yes.
The book took off. And it was, it kind of had a life of its own nearly towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you sent me over some photographs because you've travelled an awful lot.
Yes, that's right.
And I know one of the hardest things when we first met was trying to get all of the photographs that you love so much into the book. And you haven't been able to do that.
No.
But some of the ones that you sent me a beautiful photograph. I think you were in India at the time. Talk to me a little bit about the memories that you have of India.
You see, I have various memories of India because I went there first in the 1980s through a community called Thèse. It's an ecumenical community in France. And myself and my late husband were involved in the community. And every second year, they'd have a big gathering of people called an intercontinental meeting, and people would come from all over the world, converge on somewhere and have a conference, really. So that was my first time in India, and I was not prepared at all for India. I will never forget it. I didn't like the smells. I didn't like the conditions. I didn't like, I was just like somebody off the plane going, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? Because we had a placement of 3 months.
Okay.
So anyway, I got over all of that. And strangely enough, India was my kind of baptism into the East. It was my baptism into Eastern spirituality.
Okay.
Prior to that, I had grown up in a fairly conservative, not very conservative, but fairly conservative Roman Catholic home. Religion wasn't a big thing in my home. But going to Thèse broadened my vision of spirituality, certainly. It just broadened it. And we had some challenging times there, I must say. But it was actually a very growthful time for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was only in my 20s. And then when the conference was over, I took off on a train on my own, and I did a bit of travel, and there were a few adventures along the way. And then I always had this kind of heart yearning to get back to India. Okay. It was really like a seed was sown in me to get back there.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, a few years later, I was able to get back. And it just opened me up, is the only way I can describe it. It was just like that lovely flower there opening up the petals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very beautiful time, and I had to get over all my idiosyncrasies about if you're invited to somewhere, you don't drink the water in case it's contaminated, and if you do this, don't do that, and I had to just kind of let a lot of that go, because the hospitality of the Indian people was extraordinary. Really extraordinary, You'd give a little bowl of rice and the chairs with you, and it was quite extraordinary.
So you talk about your journey to India in the book.
Oh, I do.
Mm-hmm.
More than one.
Yes.
Yeah,
So the first time you went, you were there for 3 months.
Yes.
And whereabouts in India was that?
It's Tamil Nadu on the east coast. And the name of the place was St. Saviour's. It was a Jesuit college. And that's where they had built this huge pandala, with the straw roof. And everybody sitting on the floor. And we had travelled. Our work was to travel to the outlying districts to have meetings, to explain what the meeting was about. Now, some of these people had never been on a train before. And it was very moving then the day they all arrived at the conference, because they recognised me and they recognised my friend Helen, but sure, we couldn't remember who everybody was. Then when the meeting was over, there was all the farewells.
Mm-hmm.
There had been a strong community of people in St. Saviour's setting it up, because, a 3-month programme needs a lot of planning.
Absolutely.
So some people were leaving the next day, others a few days later. Then I boarded a train and I went south to Trichy. And there I spent a little while in a Bede Griffith's ashram. He was a Benedictine monk who found his soul in India.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how he wrote it. He found his soul in India. So I can start by saying I went across the country to Mumbai.
Yes.
And there's a place there called Igatpuri. It's a huge, big meditation centre.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of people go there all year round. And I spent 10 days there, sitting on the floor. Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But a Jesuit friend of mine in Ireland, he had said, if you're going to India, get to one of these retreats.
Okay.
So it was on his advice that I went. And that really clinched the connection between East and West for me.
Mm-hmm.
It really did. And it just seemed, we're all one anyway,
Of course.
It's all the one.
So how long was it from the first time that you visited India until you were able to return?
I'm pausing about that because the journal didn't have a date on it. It was a few years.
Okay.
But in the meantime, when I was down in Trichy, where Father Bede was, I met this glorious nun. Oh, she was just shining, is the only word I'd use. And I had said to her I was opening a retreat centre in Ireland and would she come? And she just beamed and said, of course I'll come. So she came 2 years later and gave a retreat in Ireland.
Wow.
Vandana, she was a very special teacher. And she was, her body was like an elastic band, She was a yogi, really.
Okay.
And her method of teaching us was we always did morning meditation. She really deepened my belief, I suppose, in the blending of the two.
Okay.
The blending of the two. And then she became a regular visitor to the retreat centre in Ireland, which I had opened in the meantime.
Okay. So the next question has to be the journey of the retreat centre. How did that come about?
Well, it might seem a bit simplistic to say it just came about, but it just did come about. There was a whole build-up to how would it come about. And the truth is, it came about through circumstances, through alignment, through meeting the right people, through, things just coming together. Now that's simplistic because there was a lot of hard work involved, but it really did just fall into place.
So was it something you'd asked the universe for? Was it something you'd put out there?
Yes, I had a prayer prior to that. There was a whole chapter on me trying to search for where my life was going, because my husband had died when I was 28 and I really was floundering. I was really floundering as to where to go, what to do. I was single, I had no children. And I was really torn. I was really torn inside to find a way in the world. So that brought me into lots of cul-de-sacs. But eventually this place manifested, and I used to sit under the tree. It was a vacant rectory, old rectory, built in 1711. And in beautiful grounds. And I used to sit under the tree, visualizing a retreat center. And manifesting it into will, into form, into something. And after a few years, it happened.
So this was the old rectory?
Yes, in Dunard, in Wicklow. Yeah.
And I remember the first time when we spoke, you said you literally put it together on a shoestring.
You have no idea. I had a friend going to England, and she came down with her car, a little car, packed full to the gills. Excuse me. With all her kitchen equipment. And we had great fun sorting things out. And I had another friend who was also going away, and she brought stuff as well. And bit by bit, people would bring a sofa that they didn't want, a table that they didn't want. And before we knew where we were, it was like a jungle shop, we had things everywhere, but we pieced them together, and it became.
Because I read that there was 2.8 acres at the rectory, so that's a lot of space to fill.
Yeah, well, the house, there's 2.8 acres around the house, but the actual house had 6 bedrooms upstairs, and then an office, and then in time I built on different buildings.
And that included a Zen garden?
Yes, that's right.
A sanctuary?
Yes.
A vegetable plot? Yes. It sounds like the most beautiful place.
Do you know, it really was. It was a beautiful place. But I think its gift really was because it came at a time in Ireland when people were searching.
Yes.
Questing. Spiritual search. And the timing of it was really a time zone in the 80s. There was nothing like that in Ireland. So it came at that time. Yeah.
So you were a pioneer.
Sort of.
So aside from everything else that you built at the retreat, and you named it the Chrysalis Retreat, that's correct, isn't it? You had hermitage cottages. What does that mean, Maria?
Well, a hermitage is, the Greek original word comes from poustinia, which means a desert place. So the idea is to get away from the madness of the world or whatever troubles you have, and spend time in a hermitage. So they're a very simple building, they're they don't have to be octagonal, but they were designed as octagonal buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And people would come, spend a weekend or spend longer, and they would pray, walk, write, read. There was no formula as you went in the door. You just did as you liked in terms of, but the basic theory or thinking behind it is to leave the world to come to a different world.
Okay.
So you had that sort of space to ponder, to maybe look at the deeper meanings of life. And we used to have a book there where people would write in comments, you know, and it was lovely. At times, not everybody would write in, but it was really lovely to, after a weekend, to open the book and read what people had written, you know. And often just, it was kind of a respite. It was a quiet place. It was a place where people recognised themselves they needed to go. You know, they really needed to have that quietness.
Yeah. So there was wellness, meditation, yoga.
Yes. Well, we even had vegetarian cookery as the programme developed. You know, when I started first, the programme was fairly limited because I was just had finished my training as a psychotherapist, and I had a certain kind of group of people I knew, and then I would invite them to come and do a weekend. So that's how the weekend started.
Okay.
And then as time went on, I remember getting the first letter, before emails, the first letter from someone saying they really wanted to come to Ireland. Was there any possibility of coming and doing a workshop for gratis? And I thought, wow, who is this person? So we had letters back and forth, and they came over and had a very good summer. And then that particular couple rented a car, went around the country, and they were happy out because they'd had a free holiday in Ireland.
Of course.
But then as the place got more established, you know, it became better known over the years, of course. And there was that just getting more established, I suppose, getting better known. And then people were writing to say, we've heard about Chrysalis, can we come? So, you know, it just had its own life, really. It took off. If that's the way to put it.
Absolutely.
It took off.
And Chrysalis was inspired from what?
Yeah, well, you see, there's a butterfly there on the table.
There is.
The cocoon. The cocoon. Well, that's a lovely butterfly. The cocoon of the butterfly is locked in, if you like. And after so many weeks, it begins to open. And out of the cocoon comes the butterfly. And they say if you blow on it, it makes the cocoon come out too early. So you have to let it have its natural course of development. So with the butterfly image, it was more or less people coming to Chrysalis to cocoon.
Okay.
You know, that was the image.
Yeah.
You come here, we don't promise an answer to all your ills. We don't promise you'll be a changed person by Sunday evening going home. But we did provide a place for reconciliation, but for just people to ponder and to, I suppose, do a bit of soul searching if I was trying to find a word. And that was the image of the cocoon coming out, but very slow.
Yes.
Very slow.
Because mindfulness is very much a journey. It's not something you can learn in an hour or...
No, indeed. There are many mindfulness, very good teachers out there teaching mindfulness. But it's, the training I did was over an 18-month period, but we had to give a 12-week class during that time.
Okay.
So our work was supervised and all of that. But yeah, I mean, we can drop into mindfulness at any time. But the thing is, do we drop into it? You know, that's the trick.
It's sustaining
it's to sustain it. And it's just even to, I mean, Sister Vanda now, that lovely nun I told you about, she'd bring us out on the country roads because Chrysalis was way out of the country. And she'd just have a group of 15 people staring at a buttercup, you know, and we'd be kind of going, what's that? But yeah, you know, you kind of immerse yourself, letting go of all the kind of dross that's there. And yes, she was an inspirational teacher, very inspirational. But yes, it isn't taught in a weekend or in a day.
No.
But you can actually do a mindfulness day, which is very helpful. It's very helpful. There's nothing to prevent people doing it. It's I think anything that helps us to kind of wind down, to come into the present moment, to appreciate nature, to come into that spaciousness that's within us.
Yes, within our own bodies.
Yeah, yeah, within our own spirit. It's that's really where it's at. Very often people would come, you know, with the storyline, which is from here up, but then to get from the head to the heart, you know, where all the emotions are held, takes a while. So I had a very good mentor in that department, Tony Packett, and he used to say, just breathe and your breath will take you where you need to go. So in other words, you know, most of us are only using, and I'm certainly only using a partial of my lungs at the moment, but we only use a very little part of our lungs. But if we really breathe deeply into our abdomen and into our being, trickles can come up of sadness or grief, loss.
Yeah.
It's all stored in the body, really. It's all stored in the body.
Now, one thing I do have to talk about as well, so you've lived in Ireland, you spent some time in India, you also spent some time in Brazil. Did you have a home there?
I did.
Tell me a little bit about that.
That happened very, very quickly. Sorry, I just need to adjust my seat here.
Whenever you're ready.
That happened very quickly. That goes into my cancer diagnosis. I had a cancer diagnosis in 2008, and I think back at it, my oncologist took out his diary and said, well, we'll schedule you in for 15th of whatever month. And I said, oh no, I said, I'm not having surgery. I'm going to João de Deus in Brazil. And he didn't know who I was talking about. He didn't know what I meant. And I said, I need 8 weeks. And then if I come back and it's still there, I can have surgery. So the interesting thing is I had a plane booked for 2 weeks after that meeting that I didn't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I hopped on a plane and I had very strong, energetic experience when I was in the Casa, it's called, in Brazil. And it's run by João de Deus, who's known as John of God. And it was hard to describe, but it was certainly like an out of this body experience is the best way I could put it. And anyway, short story is, by the time I came back to Ireland, I went for a scan and the tumour was still there. So I had a lumpectomy and was getting on fine until 2016. I had a recurrence. But in that meantime, I was back and forth to Brazil. And Martine, who was one of the Pousada is like a bed and breakfast.
Okay.
I said to him, is there any little house around here I could buy? Or because I'm going to be coming out a lot. So we jumped into this car. He drove me around the block and he brought me to this house, and I opened the door and I just looked around, and the first thing I saw was a huge crystal.
Okay.
And I said, this is it. So again, it was very quick.
But another amazing example of synchronicity.
Yeah, surely. So then I used to go there. And then I became what's called a Casa guide, meaning you become a daughter of the Casa. You kind of take some, they're not vows, but you take some promises. And then unfortunately, after a few years, there were rumours going on about João. And in my heart, I couldn't continue my work because it felt too conflicted. I just, there were too many rumours for me not to listen to them. So I had to pull out.
So you moved on.
So I moved on.
And you returned back to Ireland?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was when?
That was eventually when I came home, it was I think 2011. Yeah.
Okay. So the last few years, talk to me about the last part of the chapters that will be in the book for you.
Well, the last part is, I suppose, facing my own death. The work I had to do to get to that place in terms of healing and forgiveness, different people. And the very last chapter is just called Death. And it's quite simply my last. So I'm not sure what else to say about that.
Do you, I say do you, who are your angels?
Well, interesting. I pray to angels nearly every day. I call in Raphael. He's the angel of great healing. And Archangel Michael, the protector. I call in Saint Germain of the Violet Flame. And then I have a whole little booklet of different saints, Catholic saints, from Padre Pio to Saint Francis. I don't call on them every day, but their ears would be worn out. But no, I have a sense of guidance. I have a sense of guidance.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anne-Maria, for talking. As I said before, I could sit here all day and chat to you. I can't wait to read the book. I'm so excited.
You have to give me your postal address and I'll send you one.
Of course.
So namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.